So Mike, tell us what stresses you out?
Good question. Taxes.
You stress about everything.
Yeah, sometimes I do.
Getting places
kids,
on time.
work.
A lot of things, like not being able to afford housing.
A lot of the news these days.
There's no doubt we live in a stressful world, but what can we do about it? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of KΑKOU, Hawaii's Town Hall, start now.
Aloha and welcome to KΑKOU, Hawaii's Town Hall, live from the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Multimedia Studio. I'm Yunji Denise. A little stress can be good. It can be motivating, build resilience, and help us grow. But too much can be debilitating or even deadly. In its annual survey of stress in America released last November, the American Psychological Association found that many of us are at a breaking point. The majority of adults under 44 said that stress makes it hard for them to focus. Young adults seem to be coping the worst, with 47% of those 18 to 34 reporting that on most days they are so stressed they cannot function. So what's driving these numbers? The APA report cited long-term stress sustained since the COVID-19 pandemic began, along with worries about money, climate change, global conflict, and racial injustice. We spoke to some residents here in Honolulu about what stresses them most.
We've got multiple wars going on, some of which seem like they could spread into adjacent areas, and perhaps even more on the horizon. So that's a big source of stress.
A lot of things, like not being able to afford housing or consider a future here long term, cost of living, cost of food, mostly money.
Cost of high living, and you know, you see all these homeless people in the street, and it's like, I don't know, they're building all these tall condominiums, but some people cannot even afford it.
I got 4 granddaughters. What are they going to have when they graduate college, if they go that far? The oldest granddaughter will be 18 next month. What kind of jobs can you get over here that will get you some kind of even minimum standard of living? You don't, not at $15 an hour. I don't think the next generation really has much of a future.
So what can we do with all of that stress? KAKOU means all of us, as in we are all in this together. So how can we as a community feel better? That's what we're diving into tonight. We want to hear from you in our discussion. Unfortunately, our phone lines are down, but you can still email in your questions, and we're monitoring your comments on social media. We are streaming live at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook and YouTube pages. In our town hall, we have therapists, medical doctor, the state's director of wellness and resilience, a researcher, a yoga instructor, a teen mental health advocate, a travel guide, and a pastor. So let's begin. And I want to start with Joseph DeLorenzo, who is a therapist who specializes in trauma and grief, along with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. The American Psychological Association survey that we referenced earlier, they titled it "A Nation Recovering from Collective Trauma," citing that long-term stress that we all endured during COVID-19. The pandemic has long been declared over, so why do you think this stress is still long-lasting?
I think it just goes with the stress that we see from the people that are living around us. With the, you know, a lot of us had struggle getting jobs, or just trying to get the stress and trauma out of our body, not going to work and not being able to provide for our loved ones every day. So I think it just carries over from our social interactions that we had throughout the long time of not being able to do anything for our families.
One of the things that was really striking also in that report was that statistic of 47% of folks between the ages of 18 and 34 being so debilitated. But let's talk about folks who are even younger than that by turning to Haylin Dennison, who is a therapist and executive director of Spill the Tea Cafe, which is a clinic catered to adolescents. Haylin, what do you hear from young people that you speak with, and what's different about the stresses that they face versus the ones their parents faced at the same age?
Right, I think there's so many things that our keiki are going through that the older generations did not have to go through. And a lot of times there's stigma around mental health, especially with the older generations. But what I see anecdotally and then also research is that the younger generation is more open to seeking mental health treatment and also more aware of having that access to information pretty immediately from social media. And so one of the things that I think the self-awareness that the kids have and understanding the political climate, right? Like just having so much more information than we ever did, it can become extremely stressful. And so I guess from a primal stance, maybe a lion would come here and I would like run away and I'm like activated in my amygdala. But the way that our society has, I guess, progressed, we're getting activated from a bad grade, like an email, like a breakup with a boyfriend, and it just becomes compounded. And I think that COVID really did exacerbate some of that mental health crisis, but we still see a lot of it, especially here in Hawaii, and a lot of people don't know, but I do always make a point to shed light that we do have the highest suicide rate from 15 to 24 Native Hawaiians and other Pacific Islanders, and that's specific to Hawaii. It's not the rest of the nation. And so we are really trying to actively fight this mental health crisis and especially suicide prevention for our youth in Hawaii.
Wow, that is a stunning statistic. Let's talk to a young person. We're lucky to have one on our panel tonight. Raphael Stark is a high school junior who founded CHATS, which stands for Caring for Hawaii Teens with Speech Challenges. He's also a youth mental health advocate. Raphael, building on what Haylin was just talking about, what do you hear from your peers about what stresses them?
Yeah, so I know now one of the leading things is school, and it can sometimes be the pressures that the parents put on their kids, but it can also be comparison to other kids, but not only like how another person might have something that they don't, but also grades. Like I know some of my friends will be like, I got a 28 on a 30, and then I'm like, that's really good, and they're like, well, it could have been a 30, and then I'm like, what? But it's those things that that further down the line aren't gonna really impact you. So why should they impact you at such a great level now?
Interesting.
Man, I'll take a 20.
20 out of 30 is good enough.
We want to also talk about just the economic pressure you heard there in some of the responses, people feeling very financially stressed. To tell us more about that now is Christy MacPherson, who is the Director of Community Engagement at Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law and Economic Justice. We know we have some of the highest cost of living in the country here in Hawaii. We have a lot of people who are living very close to the margin. Tell us a little bit about just how many folks in our community are experiencing that kind of financial stress and what you're hearing from those folks.
Well, we all know that the cost of living here is becoming almost ridiculous. And for a lot of families, they don't even have places to live. They don't have the financial means to pay their bills. We're hearing this all the time, and that's why where I work at Hawaii Appleseed, we're trying to actually change policies that are going to really help Hawaii's families, including raising the minimum wage, affordable housing bills, things like that. So getting the community involved in actually pushing for these changes, I think, is really important.
Yeah,
and we're talking about de-stressing.
And you did mention that a lot of the folks that you're working with are heads of households. Parents are under unique stress. That APA report also found that parents are under added stress. No surprise for those of us who have kids. Turns out 2/3 of parents, compared to 39% of adults who do not have children, report feeling consumed by worries regarding money. 62% said that no one understands just how stressed they are, versus 42% of those without kids. We spoke to one mom here who told us just how much of a juggling act life can be. Take a listen.
It's just like, okay, I gotta like make sure the kids are, like taken care of. All the school events are handled. I gotta make sure the doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, the pets are taken care of. Make sure he's, where he's supposed to be, picking up the kids. Yeah, it's just basic mom stuff. I think that's probably the most stressful part of life.
One person who hears a lot about the mom stuff is Dr. Nadine Tenn, who is Chief of Pediatrics at the Queen's Health System. She practices family medicine as well. Full disclosure, she is our family's doctor here as well. Dr. Salle, what do you hear from your patients about the kinds of stress that parents in particular are under, and what does that sustained stress actually do to your body physically?
I think I'd probably be repeating what has been shared a little bit. Most of my parents, when you compare them to the generation before, I think a lot of our parents, well, I don't know if our parents or our moms would agree with this, they were shielded from a lot of things. And the parent of today is being hit with everything. Just as an example that was just given, suddenly you are driving your child to every single sports event. Suddenly you have to sit in traffic that is like an hour and a half. Our families that used to be closer together, where you'd have grandparents as backup, is down. In addition, we mentioned the stressor of just the cost of living. So if you think about it, instead of just having one stress, a little bit of poverty here, or a little bit of you're away from your immediate family, a lot of our families are experiencing all. And what we have to think about is stress, when it comes from more than one place, when it is compounded and it is over a long period of time. And for many of our families, there's no end to this. We can map it out over, okay, by the time the kids are in high school, trying to make short-term goals, then I'll be over. But we all want our kids to go to college if they can, just so they'll be able to afford to live here. So secretly we know that there is no end to it. When there's no end to it, it becomes physiologic. And it starts to manifest itself in sometimes depression, sometimes insomnia, not being able to turn off at the end of the night. And that also translates to the way you parent. Your children are not blind. We all know our children are literally a mirror of ourselves. So they begin to stress. That's why it's so important to get the 28 out of 30, because suddenly that's not good enough. And that's just us reflecting on them. You also referred to the fact that on social media, back in the day, who echoed in your ear was just your immediate community. They've got the entire world giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down to whatever it is that they're willing to share, as opposed to just their small community. So I don't know if that helps a little bit of both saying how stress looks so different, and then how it's manifesting itself into almost a medical condition. Mm-hmm. And then now the medical field is trying to treat a societal problem with drugs sometimes, which are often a good solution, or sometimes engaging mental health.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that step two, about engaging and de-stressing. We did talk to people here in Hawaii about how they are de-stressing. There were some common themes.
I swim. I go down to Kaimana Beach, get in the water, and I swim for at least an hour. And that just melts everything away, and it feels really good. I also have a bunch of friends down at the beach, so I usually wind up seeing them after the swim and socializing, and there's usually a lot of good laughs to be had.
I pray, so a Christian prayer. I pray for I pray for Maui, I pray for Hawaii, I pray for my family, your family. So I just include prayer as a de-stressor.
Just the feeling of knowing that there's a higher power kind of with me, guiding me. Even if I don't know, he does. So that's always comforting to me.
I used to have a mean attitude, especially when I was young, right? So I had to think about that. I said, why am I so mean? Because I was seeing everything negative, right? Everything was negative. Somebody say something to me, first thing my mind went to the negative. So now I go to the positive, and everything's so much better. Life is better, right? See, even you smiling, so the cameraman smiling. She's probably smiling up under that mask, right? So smiling is contagious.
It sure is. We loved him. He was so positive. So we heard their exercise, faith, and that positive outlook. Let's drill a little deeper into those and talk to Suzanne Sasaki, who is a mental health counselor and also a yoga instructor. Suzanne, why is moving the body so important?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Well, just like the gentleman on the street was saying, just getting into the water, sometimes doing something as simple as your favorite action is what sort of calms the nerves and sort of de-escalates any sort of heightened level of anything, whether it's an emotion or a heavy thought. So movement is also intuitive to everyone. We all do it, so we don't really have to think about what's the best movement. We just have to think in terms of what's the most accessible movement and what's the most fun, and not limit ourselves to any one thing. And I think there's always something that requires movement, whether it be with your hands, something that's dexterous, or with your entire body that resonates with you. So I think we just have to find that thing.
Yeah, and I like that you said fun. I think that that's really key.
Favorite word.
And we also want to tell the viewers good news. The phones are back up, so you can call in with your questions or comments for our panel tonight. Please do get involved in that discussion. We'd love to hear from you. Of course, how we move our body is important, and also what we put in it is so important. And to talk more about that, we're here with Jodi Leslie, a doctor of public health and a registered dietitian. Tell us a little bit about how what we eat changes not only how we feel physically, but also impacts our mental health.
So we have mood hormones that our body makes, and we need certain nutrients in order to make those mood hormones. And so if people are not eating the right food, or basically if they're not eating a lot of whole foods, which would be like fruits and vegetables and whole grains or starchy vegetables, and then chances are you're probably not getting the nutrients that you need in order to make the hormones that you need in order to regulate your mood. And so what happens then is that when you're not getting what you need, your body will try to overcompensate by producing more of other hormones like stress hormones. And then so that will be a lot higher in our body. And then that will create inflammation in our body, which will make our brain cells more sensitive to stress, so that it becomes hypersensitive to stress. So when you have a stressful event, you're actually it's actually overreacting because it's not functioning properly.
And it is so interesting because when you are stressed, I know this in myself, then you tend to turn to the foods that are the most unhealthy.
Yes.
Why is that?
That's
Tequila's good, that's why.
Well, there's a lot of factors that go into food choices. I think for some of it, people will often turn to comfort food. Yeah, things that they grew up with, which may or may not be the healthiest thing. People will often turn to sugar because they're looking for that quick high that sugar gives. Or likewise, it might turn to alcohol because alcohol will give them that quick lift that they need, or caffeine. And so, but that quick lift is not the thing that's going to sustain them. It's just going to sustain them for that moment, and then maybe an hour or two later, then they're going to be back where they were, or possibly even lower.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We also heard there about the power of faith, about the power of prayer, and the feeling that there is a higher power, and that bringing comfort to some folks. Jeannie Thompson is the pastor at Nu'uanu Congregational Church. Pastor, tell us about how faith of any kind can give people comfort and help them de-stress.
Well, faith allows us to get out of ourselves, I think, and it's every faith tends to help people understand that we don't have to do everything ourselves. And I think that's one of the things about stress or any kind of pain that happens. Pain and especially emotional pain, tends to close us off and makes us turn inward and makes us feel very much alone. What faith does is it helps us to move outward and to see the world around us and to receive what is around us, which is a world full of people, many of whom are just waiting to be kind and open to each other. And, well, it was interesting this afternoon. One of the Bibles that I use is a little app on my phone. And I pressed on it, and up came all this stuff about stress. And the passage that it turned me to was Paul's letter to the Philippians in chapter 4, where he suggests that what faith can do, what God does first and foremost, is he wishes us peace. This is what God wants for all of us. And that by opening ourselves to God, we can be shaped by that hope that God has for us. So we don't have to do it all by ourselves.
That is quite comforting. I want to turn to Lanai Tabora, who is a comedian, an international travel guide, and a foodie. This is a guy who knows how to laugh, where to go, what to eat. I've known you
It's
for
about time you get to me.
for a long time, and I have to tell you, you call Lanai and his voicemail says, "Tell me your good news," and that's the only person who says, "I'll call you back, I'm busy." Your voicemail is really emblematic of the kind of energy that you put out into the world. I know it's kind of cliche to say that laughter is the best medicine, but in your own life, how has laughter been helpful?
It's been the best stress reliever for me, and it's been, it's kind of, somebody mentioned about, I always say stress is contagious. So I had to get rid of all my friends that give me stress. And I just hang around people who laugh. So I have a small circle of friends who are comedians, and comedians think different and see things different. And I've been doing stand-up for a long time, and it's kind of been my stress reliever, but it's also hanging around people who laugh all the time. Like, we forgot how to laugh, it seems like, especially on social media. You can say this glass is half full, and there's going to be a million arguments about that glass half full. I'm going, what is wrong with these people? We just look at everything as an argument. But I think we're brought up that way, right? You play sports, you're competitive, you start stacking up these things, how I can be a better arguer, all these little things, and it's just all for nothing, right? So laughter is key. We've all forgotten how to laugh. A lot of people really have.
And it sounds like you're kind of keying into the thing the gentleman who swims says too, about finding 100%. Community.
Yeah, 100%. And working out too is another thing that I do all the time. I mean, it's a big stress reliever. But I don't take anything serious anymore. Like, I don't even watch the news because stress is contagious. It stresses me out watching it, And, all my friends are in media. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry to stress you out, but I don't watch you on the news. But you just have to detach yourself from all the things that are, barnacles. They're like barnacles. Yeah. Just get them off your body and watch how much things are better.
Yeah, I know, going off of what you said, there's a Charlie Chaplin quote that says, "Life in close-up is a tragedy, but life, when you just pull back and look at the whole thing, it's a comedy."
100%.
Yeah.
You're so smart. So smart.
I like that a lot. One person who is very much engaged with the state's response, and this is very interesting, kind of a new way that Hawaii is tackling stress, is Tia Hartsock, who is the state's first ever director of the Office of Wellness and Resilience. It's a new office under this administration. Tell us a little bit about how the state is working to address stress in particular, and why the governor thinks that this is something worth investing in.
Everything is revolving around mental health right now. The impacts of mental health, the impacts of what everybody's been talking about, the constant going, and the constant demands. And when you really look at the root of a lot of the things that people are concerned about these days, is the experience and the impacts of trauma and traumatic experiences. And so one of the things that we're trying to do as a state is, well, a couple of months ago declared Hawaii a trauma-informed state, which really acknowledges not only current trauma, but historical trauma, and really looking at how trauma impacts the way that we show up. And so something that we're really looking at is trying to educate, trying to train people up, trying to approach and respond to people who have trauma histories in ways that don't re-traumatize, looking at our systems to ensure that they are creating policies and procedures that, and revising policies and procedures that don't traumatize, don't re-traumatize, don't trigger, and creating environments overall that create more of a, really more of a, to be honest, more of a nurturing, welcoming, compassionate, caring environments for all of us who both work in those environments and also engage in services in those environments.
Yeah, Joseph, I saw you nodding there. Tell us a little bit about what, when we think about being trauma-informed and having the kind of mindset shift. I mean, this is like a huge sea change that will probably take some time that Tia's talking about. What do you think that looks like in day-to-day in our interactions with one another?
I think when I see clients, there's a point where they get to, there's something called a window of tolerance, and everyone has one in their nervous system. So when they go through this trauma journey, I guess you can say, they start to build what's called the optimal living environment. And you can do that afterwards, or you can do that before you start the trauma work, but it's going off of what we said before about just surrounding yourself with people that will understand you and accept you for who you are, and kind of building an unconditional positive regard to always accept who you are, no matter where you come from, is the real healing factor in the trauma.
And Haylin, I would imagine that rings true for the work that you do as well. There's a question here from Kenson who says, what is a doable solution in helping our children deal with financial stress in Hawaii? Tell us a little bit about how you see the stresses that the parents are experiencing, what Dr. Salle was talking about, the mirror, and how we can not necessarily shield kids from reality, because we don't necessarily want to exclude them from what life is like, but make sure that they're not absorbing all of that.
Absolutely. I think that it is unique, especially in Hawaii, and we don't want to parentify our children where we kind of transfer our stress or our financial stress on them, but they are witnessing and they do understand how expensive Hawaii is, and a lot of local people are being priced out of paradise, and I just don't want to, sit here and kind of like gaslight. If their basic needs are not being met, then we are in fight or flight, right? And so to expect parents to be able to self-regulate and, have all of these very healthy psychological modalities that they're using with their children, if you're not regulated, right? It's so important that we come together as a community and take action. And I know I'm just one person, but being trauma-informed, we just don't have that time. And so when the pandemic was going on and all of our ERs were full with kids and actively suicidal kids could not get in, that's when we decided to open our teen mental health clinic to kind of try to take on the overflow. But again, trying to solve for two issues, which is an access problem. We all know that there's just a healthcare provider shortage in general, across the nation, but specifically in Hawaii, right? And so the access problem, having kids be able to come into the cafe, and then also providing that individual therapy or family therapy. And when you talk about finances, right, we had to launch a youth entrepreneurs program so that kids can gain that confidence to say, we don't want to just sit here and feel like we are victims. We want to be able to somehow take action, right? And in taking action, I think we can build those skills, but it does, I think, start with an honest look at where we are and saying, hey, most families can't afford to live here, and what can we actually do about it? We have to co-create our reality together, and it does start with that self-awareness. So I know it's not a hard and fast answer, but I would always recommend to parents that they are looking at themselves and finding ways that they can either mindfully regulate themselves or find a way to I guess, shield their kids from that stress, right? And knowing what is age appropriate. Like, you would want your kid to maybe have age appropriate problems, you know, like friends or like grades, or, you know, I didn't get onto the baseball team, like just helping them find tools to overcome that, right? We really want to make sure that like the neuroplasticity, that I think is the strongest like predictor of success. Like, if we're looking at someone who's mentally healthy, that means that they're flexible in their thinking. That means that their neural pathways are, you know, malleable. And so that doesn't happen without practice, right? So we have to continuously look at ourselves and continuously work on ourselves. And again, it's not like an easy answer, but that is what works.
But as parents, do you think we're enabling our kids? Because back in the day, we're like, I need to take care of all my kids, I need to have this, and now it's like, okay, now you're on your own. You know what I mean? I think a lot of us are enabling our kids.
I agree. I think that a lot of us are enabling our kids. I also think that it's important for parents to allow their kids to vocalize their feelings.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like back when we grew up, right? It's just like, hey.
Yeah, we got to bring back lickings.
Yeah, lickings, right?
Because look, I came out fine.
But
you think
yes.
so, huh?
Well, one thing that you really keyed in there was on access to mental health care. And there's a Rick, a retired counselor, writes in, according to a recent article, only 18% of those in need of mental health services are able to access mental health services in Hawaii. What do we as a community need to do to improve access to services for folks who need these services? Tia, I'm interested to hear from you.
You know, I think providing choices for people is so critical, because formal mental health supports will work for some people, and it will be very effective, and it will be extremely helpful for some. Not everybody goes to formal mental health supports when they need emotional support. We did a recent survey, and it's still out, as you know, that the majority of people are saying that they turn to friends and family when they need emotional support. And so to me, everything that people are touching on really kind of centers around the concept of wanting to connect, needing to connect. So not only connecting with ourselves, especially as trauma survivors, and when we have severe trauma in our childhood, we often disconnect from our bodies, we disconnect from our minds, from all the pain that's in our mind. We do everything we can to disconnect. But reconnecting to ourselves, connecting to, as many of them were talking about, connecting to themselves, to others, and connecting to a place. Yes. How often do we really get our feet in the dirt and in the sand and connect to this this unbelievably special place that has healing powers everywhere that we look? So the connection piece on all those levels, to family, to community, to ourselves, to friends, to the place, is critical in our ability to be well.
Yeah, Dr. Salle, I see you nodding on that. Would you like to add?
I do. So much that she's saying, you know, get grounded. You said so many things. The first is, I thought, you know, how do we remind ourselves that we're human and the things that we need to be human? We're touching on everything from faith to just needing to be physical to, like you said, to being one with the land. And then we touched on the various things that we think that we can do to help. But that's at the extreme. And at the extreme, we are too short of resources to be able to help what we are now describing, not a few people, not just a particular aspect of our society as a whole. It's like all of us. That is the title of the show. So the strategy then should be, what can we do upstream? And I wonder, as you were describing some of the things that are being focused on by your department, what if instead and it's not that we shouldn't focus on solutions or trauma, but start with aloha. Start with the words that we know that have always made this such a unique place. Aloha, ohana, and community. What if we shift that it is not entirely on the individual to de-stress, but what is it that we can start to do more as a community? It can seem very large when we have to wait for it to be done on a state level. But when we think of our community, what can we do? Because it was mentioned, that's where people turn to. They want to know, what can we be there for our friends and for our family? And part of the stress, I believe, is that we're being pulled, we're in traffic, we're doing all of these elsewhere, that we forget who's our community and when is the last time we just had a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, you know, and talk story. And is that part of the solution as opposed to the end? Not to put anyone out of business here, you know, but at the beginning where we're missing those opportunities.
We've forgotten aloha.
Yes, we're forgetting aloha. And how can we use our different posts to reinstitutionalize aloha in the way it was?
My mom, I used to call my mom all the time. I'm all stressed out. When I was in college, she goes, "Come home then."
Yes, come home, because it would be a different
feeling. She didn't mean to move home. She said, "Come home."
Well, Lanai, let's expand on that. You know, what do you think, what does aloha look like to you? And when we try to build the kind of community that Dr. Salle is talking about, how do we see that in action?
You know, it's been asked a lot lately, and it's been brought up a lot. What is aloha, right? Because we forgot. A lot of people have forgotten what it is. And if you really look back at when we get together as a community, it's always when something bad happens. We get together, we raise a lot of money, and we hurrah, hurrah, and support each other, and then we go back to our lives, right? Back in the olden days, especially growing up on Lanai, aloha was every day. We helped everybody every day. We cooked for the neighbor, we traded, we did everything together. But I think when you get into that lifestyle of I need to make more money, I do my everyday job, you become, greed is a word, you become selfish. The aloha is in the back now. So, you know, to answer your question, we need to start living like a community again. You know, that's aloha to me.
Pastor, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, what he was saying reminded me that very often, well, every Sunday and in between Sundays, I talk about God's love. I talk about compassion. I talk about being kind to one another and allowing ourselves to really believe that we are loved. And inevitably, somebody will say to me, "Oh yeah, well that's fine, but I have to get back to the real world." Well, what if the real world is a place where we care for each other? What if the real world is a place where compassion is actually important, it's valuable, it's something that we all agree that we're going to be towards one another, compassionate, forbearance, forgiving? What if that's the real world?
And that's a world I think we all want to live in.
But it starts with us.
Janine on Kauai says, advice for viewers, this is more of a comment than a question, combat stress by avoiding isolation and joining supportive groups where you can cultivate meaningful relationships. Don't be alone with your stress. Suzanne, can you talk about that, the importance of being with others, whether it's a group yoga class or getting outdoors together or meeting for that cup of tea?
Sure. As I'm listening to everybody speak, I'm just thinking of all the students and clients that I've interacted over the years. And then, you know, great advice from the viewer. And while I don't disagree with that, I feel that that might fall on the deaf ears of people who are choosing to isolate because of their introversion. And I think one thing that COVID did bring out was it actually became a very comfortable place for introverts. And I raised one, and he said, he's like, I don't want to go back to school. And I felt my heart break a little bit, but I do feel like, especially in Hawaii, where aloha is an ideal and a lifestyle, I suppose, it's a way of life, I feel that there's an extrovert ideal that somehow that the love has to pour outward. And if the love is not always displayed, that there's something wrong with you or there's something like stingy about your love. And so when I'm working with quieter students, quieter clients, you know, introverts, people who are in isolation, I feel that their needs also have to be met. So I'm going to go back to my original advice was there's something for everyone. So, you know, when we talked about movement, it's not big, doesn't have to be big movement. It could be small movement. It could be crocheting or, you know, sketching or making origami, or it could be swimming in the big wide ocean and doing yoga classes and going to the gym. I think a great thing, Lanai, for introverts would be to listen to you a little bit more. I think they need to put a little Lanai in their back pocket, have a doctor in their back pocket, you know, have a pastor in their back pocket, have a therapist in their back pocket, have a nutritionist and a friend, you know, appear in their back pocket and have all of these resources to walk around with all the time.
Yeah, well, Christy, can you build on that, this idea that, you know, we all need kind of a team, a village, a cohort. Do we have enough of that here in Hawaii? We know that, you know, Hawaii is such a special place. There is this, you know, the Aloha spirit, you know, that we all crave and we grew up with and that we know and love. But do we have enough of those teams around us?
I think we do. I think people tend to connect, like what Tia was saying. People connect over different things, and I think what I found is people can connect over pain as well. And when you're in pain, you want to be around other people who can kind of help you process that pain in a way that takes you somewhere. You know, it's having that feeling of hopelessness, I think, is so prevalent right now. So one way that like community organizing is about having folks get together, sharing their pain with each other, and then figuring out how together as a community they can make changes that actually impact their lives. And that's, I think, building leaders in communities and having them get their own people and saying, hey, let's do something. I think that forward movement is so important, especially now in our society, is knowing that you actually can impact something is, I think it's really golden, and it encompasses aloha and everything else. So,
Raphael, I think you wanted to add to that.
Yeah. I know something that I've seen is, just letting people know that they aren't alone. I know the motto of my nonprofit is be different together, because we all have differences, whether that's how we look or talk or just live. And the important thing is for people to know that they aren't alone.
I like the handshakes and the high fives here.
Sometimes.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sometimes to help somebody not be alone, it's not always about words. A lot of people think that you need to say something to make people feel heard, but just being with somebody in the same room that's feeling a lot of pain can do a lot for them in the long run. And then eventually they could find somebody who is in the outside world, not so much in the house or, you know, wherever they're being an introvert or whatnot, but they'll find the same energy on the outside world that makes them feel like they're not alone and seen and heard, which is very healing, and just being there and being seen. Yeah.
There's someone on Facebook wrote, "No paka, de-stress, fire it up." So I want to ask.
That's another good one.
Dr. Leslie, how do we distinguish between what makes us feel good and might be a way that we're de-stressing as to whether that's healthy or not? You know, you mentioned wine earlier. This person is, using alternative substances. How do we make sure that we keep that in line?
I think it's well, I mean, it's more than a feeling. I mean, it's partly a feeling. I think, it's what you get out of it. But I think also it's telling about the situation that you are in, the people who you're with when you're doing that action. I think that says a lot. If you're with, say, for example, people say, I drink because it's a way to be social and it helps me to de-stress and stuff. But if you're if you need to de-stress in a bar, or if you're always in a bar, or you're with people who are being rowdy, say, for example, not saying all drinkers are rowdy, but, then that's telling as to what the real effect is on you, I think.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Lanai, I want to key into something that I know you've told me about before, and that is having a bucket list. And I think that
You didn't send me yours yet.
I have. It's a work in progress. Well, what's interesting about you is that these are big things and these are little things. These could be going to the Eiffel Tower, but they could also be going, on a walk in a place that you haven't been before. Tell us a little bit about that and why that's a useful tool for you that could be accessible to everyone.
I started doing this travel club thing, and it was a de-stressor because it was a no thinking trip. So I put it together so you didn't have to think, and you just come with me. I take you to the best restaurants, take you to the best places you couldn't get in. And it became a success because people came back and said, I like this kind of trip because traveling can be stressful. So then I started challenging people, and I said, I'm going to send you my bucket list, and I'm going to put a check by everything that I've done and everything that I'm working on. But when I send it to you, you have to send me yours. So it started getting people to think about the little things when they saw mine, whether it was helping a homeless person or whether it was traveling the world, like you said. So all of my good friends, if I've asked you for a bucket list, it's because I was trying to get you to do something for yourself. So Yunji hasn't sent me hers yet. It's been 10 years.
And, you know, but what I love about your list in particular is that it's not all super aspirational.
No.
A lot of it is very accessible. Tell us
Yeah.
about why that's important.
I think it was from my mom. My mom always told us growing up, you have to get involved in the community. And I don't share a lot, but I do a lot in the community by myself, because that's also a de-stressor for me, but it also makes me feel good. And when you put things together on paper and you have to do it, your to-do list, it makes it easier to do. So you can't always do the big things, but there's a lot of little things that you should put on your bucket list, and that's why I think it's important to do.
Yeah, and that goes, Haylin, back to what you were saying about having hope, seeing the future. You know, tell us a little bit about that, you know, how we inspire young people, because I go back to that statistic that we talked about at the top of the show, 18 to 34-year-olds saying that 47% saying they feel so debilitated they cannot function because of stress. Now, this poll didn't look at teenagers, but I would imagine it's much the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, the entire Gen Z, right, they do, like Raf was talking about, they do put some of that pressure on themselves. Like, yes, it does come from our parents and grandparents' expectations in that way, but there's like a very strong black and white thinking, which is like always or never, or, you know, it has to be this way, and I think that lack of flexibility that we talked about earlier, it's called like a thought distortion. And so when people can't recognize their own thought distortions, then they become stuck. Right? And so we do try to talk about the mindset around all of these things, but we do want like at least the North Star. Like, yes, you're 16, yes, you're 18, yes, it's gonna change, right? You can change your major. You don't have to make that decision today, and they put that pressure on themselves. Like, I'm gonna major in, you know, computer science, or, you know, but to have a North Star, and maybe what that means is looking at your life in 10-year blocks, right? So if you're looking in 10 years, like, where do you, of course it's gonna change, but at least you have that North Star of where we're trying to go, and also knowing yourself and what I guess is super important to you, or your values, knowing like what you're willing to compromise and not. I think that also gives people purpose and like a sense of peace that can lower your stress.
You know, Dr. Salle, I wonder, when we were talking about the parents, but just people in general, are we all trying to just do too much?
I think so. I think we're living in a life, and it was touched on many times. We're being inundated with so much more information, and it's not just what is happening in conflict in various parts of the world, but it is also just a tremendous amount of information on just the simple things in your life. You know, you're now comparing whether your dinner looked better than someone else's dinner, whether your bathroom is as good as the one of someone that you probably went to high school 20 years ago. But because of Facebook, you now know exactly what they're doing.
Social media is the problem.
Well, it's not so much.
Let's turn it all off.
I'm just saying it is an arm of I think what does cause our stress. And it is on an algorithm. I think we're all very comfortable with the fact that a lot of this is being fed to us on a regular basis. And I think as human beings, we weren't wired to take in this much information and this much scrutiny, you know, on a daily basis. Whether it's, have you ever looked at the average time many of our teenagers, much less our adults, are on social media on any given day? I think they were showing easily 8 to 10 hours a day. Do you know anything that we practice at? My point is do you guys remember that book? I forget what it was.
Encyclopedia.
No, not the encyclopedia, but it was a quote that to become an expert at something, you had to do it for like 10,000 hours.
10,000 hours.
And that basically is as though you're trying to be an expert at something. That's a lot of time to become a great pianist or such. Now we're talking just negative information coming at you on a regular basis. Just in terms of math, what did we expect? So yes, should we turn it off a little bit? I don't know if turning it off is the answer, but we need to reframe it. We need a bit of an awareness of what it's doing to us, whether it's food. Do you know, we have to be aware of our choices. We have to make our families aware of their choices and then help guide them on what they also tell their children. Not that they don't always listen to us, but, and it could be directly from us as parents, but back to that theme that we touched on earlier with community. We as a community also have to start to collectively give back in a way where in school, we give positive messages back to our kids and we show them that they count and that they matter and that what they are being heard. But if those messages aren't being given, then I guess we have a stressed individual and we're trying to fix it on the tail end rather than at the beginning.
Yeah, Tia, add to that.
You know, it's a very interesting concept when you think about being on social media or looking down at your phone all the time and engaging with across the world, and oftentimes and all the information, like she was saying, that's coming at you. While we're doing that, we're also not moving, and we're not releasing hormones. Like when we were kids, I mean, we were always out, running around, playing in the wherever, not engaged, but it was a lot of activity, right? And when a lot of the generations now are just, and not just the young ones, but even us as adults, staring at our phones and staring all day at our computers, all day, standing at our computers. We're not moving, and we're not releasing chemicals in our brains that create happiness and joy and balance those emotions that are released when we're highly stressed. When we move, just like she was saying, we release hormones that reduce stress. And so when we're sedentary, staring at our phones, we're not moving. And so that whole concept, I think we don't look at enough. The pure physical piece of it, not just nutrition, but definitely nutrition, but not just the exposure to the information, but the lack of movement is huge.
Yeah, and Mr. DeLorenzo, you want to add to that?
I'm really going off of the body movement because I guess I don't know what you call it. You perform somatic experiencing with my clients, and what that is all of our stress can get trapped in our body and is just there, right? So it's almost like we're looking at all of the stressful things all day and we're getting really overwhelmed. And sometimes I would just say to clients, let's slow down. Let's just kind of see what your body wants to do right now and let's just do it. And oftentimes they'll just start shaking, right? And they'll get that energy out of their body and then be like, wow, I feel really good right now. And I'm like, that's all you had to do.
And that's so interesting because you think of it as something mental, but it actually has a physical manifestation. Tell us about that.
It's all connected, I guess you could say mind, body, and spirit, but when it's just that we can have a thought about something and then our body has a reaction to it, or our body has a reaction to it and then our mind kind of follows what our body is telling us. So
I was
it
really
depends.
sick once, 10 years ago, and I saw this guy, and whether you believe it or not, he did a Rolfing session on me. You guys know what Rolfing is?
Absolutely.
I did 12 sessions, and it's breaking down the fascia, the white stuff that holds your muscle together, and I was an emotional wreck. Everything he said is going to come out, and I've never felt better since doing the Rolfing. So to what you guys are saying, I think that's key. So when you exercise, you know, all of that stuff comes out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And the same thing with acupuncture or massaging or chiropractor.
I get a massage once a week.
Yeah, you got it. You got
We
it.
all want to be Lanai. Hanging with comedians, just living that bucket list. But you know, what we're talking about in some sense can feel kind of aspirational, particularly the nutrition piece. You know, as a mom, I have a 5 and a 7-year-old, and I want them to eat vegetables, and I feel this pressure. You know, Dr. Salle is saying someone else's dinner looks better than mine. It certainly looks healthier sometimes than what my kids are eating. And so, Dr. Leslie, how can we feed our families and ourselves better, especially when we're dealing with the kind of challenges that, you know, so many in our community face financially, that healthy food can feel out of reach
and expensive?
You know, surprisingly, a lot of the foods that you wouldn't even think of are foods that is really helpful in physiologically and psychologically reducing stress. And a few examples would be like bananas, poi, tofu, spinach. You know, it's like simple things. You know, another thing people don't think of, and I was at a conference last week, and I was telling them to eat more nori. You know, so it's like even like those packages of like the Korean nori, you know, that's something easy you can give to your kids, and then that has a lot of nutrients in that. And so we don't necessarily have to change up the whole way we eat, because a lot of these foods that I mentioned are foods that we already do eat, but maybe we should just make it more of a regular part of.
Did they do any studies on processed sugar and salt? Because when we were growing up, we didn't have processed sugar and salt. So do you think that's a big component to the body?
Oh, definitely.
That's a whole nother
Right?
show.
Yeah.
next week on Town Hall.
Yeah, the processed food is definitely a big part of it. I want to get to Pat from Maui, who says that he's a veteran who has PTSD. His best stress reliever is riding a horse. He says there's something about riding a horse that takes away all of his stress. And when we were out there interviewing folks across town, a lot of them did say their pets. Suzanne, I want to go back to you, because I know that you are an animal lover. And what is it about having a pet that is so helpful?
Wow. You're asking me all these loaded questions. I don't know that I'm prepared to answer all of them. But I also started the shows also telling you that one of my stresses is going home after this show to the mess that 4 dogs and 2 cats will leave me for me. So I'm going to go back to the somatic experience. So for me, the most obvious thing with a pet is just what you see with the eyes. It's just like there's just something very adorable about furry animals. But then there's just the touch. And so I think there's a reason why, fluffy, well-behaved dogs become therapy dogs, is because there's just something very therapeutic about just the touch, the experience of something soft connecting with your skin, and it just travels through your body, and it has a hormonal response, and the oxytocin, dopamine rises, the stress hormones go down, and there's this like magical chain reaction. So I'm not saying that that's what I'm thinking every single time I connect with my animals, but I do feel grateful for it every day, and they don't talk back, which is amazing. It's amazing. And also it has also taught my children really the importance of the cycle of life, and just not only the cuteness of it all, but just the work that goes behind it. I had the pleasure of watching or being able to help my one of my dogs through 2 cycles of birth, and so my kids helped me through all of that. So usually when you get a cat or a dog, even if you get them when they're kittens or puppies, they're already 8 weeks old, and so you've sort of bypassed the critical phase of them coming into the world, and being able to go through that sort of birthing. Well, obviously, like her being pregnant, but just mean the birthing and the tragedies, just the hardship, all of the emotions that go along with losing a pet. All of those things just kind of, I'm hoping they tell me that has made them a lot more resilient, understanding, compassionate. So for me, it's been a bonus to parent.
Yeah. You make me want to get a cat.
Go get it. Go get a cat, go get a dog. Run to Humane Society.
Lori wrote in and says, and I'd like Raphael to take this one on. How do we help teens who are harmed by friends on social media with hurtful words? That social media can be such a stressful place. How do you help your peers through some of those social media stresses that were referenced earlier tonight?
Yeah, I know there are a lot of those. And I think the number one thing with that is the comparison that comes with that. seeing what people have that you don't. But I'd say the way that we can help those teens is obviously it's kind of a case to case thing, because some comparisons can be more severe than others. But I know an important thing that I talk to with my friends is just kind of giving them a reminder of what they have, and that you could always have more, but it's up to you to make the best out of what you have. And I think that's another important topic, is that it can be those super small things that can be good or bad. You could even say like, oh, why do they have that color of nail polish? I want that. And like, it's such a small thing, but also those small things can make such a positive impact on someone too. Like even just in showing aloha, like just smiling to someone that passes you, because that's actually saved a person's life. Is it took one person to just smile at them, and that ultimately changed their mind about taking their own life. So I say that's another thing, is it's those small things that can do so much for someone.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing from you is empathy, compassion, and gratitude. And Pastor, can you build on that? You know, we hear often that we should have an attitude of gratitude, and it can be hard sometimes to remember all the blessings in our life. But why is that healing and helping us de-stress, do you think?
Gratitude? Well, gratitude allows us to, once again, turn outward. Instead of, this is something I did for myself, yay for me. It's, this is something that is a gift. A smile on the street can be a gift. In that moment, in that time and place in your life, compassion is a gift that we give ourselves and others. And once again, it does turn us more outward. But there's another facet to this that I'd also like to talk about a little, at least a little bit. And so I'm very glad that my friend Christy is here. Christy and I have known each other for years. But she works, and Appleseed works on the causes of stress that are not just personal, but that are also community-wide and actually have to do with justice. Because the prevalence of justice in the community is what makes for better mental health. It makes for less stress. When we actually know that these needs that we feel ourselves, which are also felt by a lot of other people, are actually being seen, heard, and attended to. And I want more of that kind of gratitude, where we know that the root causes of our stress are actually something that's being held up in the community, in the established bureaucratic parts of our community. I mean, the fact that we have an office on resilience now, that's huge. Yeah. Because it says that this is important. The fact that we can come together and talk about the fact that we need more mental health for providers for all of us at all ages in our life, but especially getting help for young people who are feeling it at a very critical time in their life. This is not just about what we can do for ourselves, but it's about creating a community of healing that begins with justice.
Yeah, Christy, can you build on that? Well,
amen.
Just this idea that public policy actually is very critical to the well-being and the stress of our community.
I think it's the policy, but it's also the process of working on policies. You know, I think, like I mentioned before, it's that feeling that my community cares and that we can do something together. It was really neat. Like, I went to a meeting the other day with 2 houseless folks from KΑKOU, and we went to a neighborhood board meeting. And when we came out, one of them got very emotional, and I think it was because she felt like, wow, people are hearing us, they're seeing us. And I think that's so valuable, especially now when everyone's into their phones and, you know, not paying attention to what's going on with people around me. And I think she just really felt that everybody was there to support her for a change. Someone who's never seen, they're in their tents, you know, and I think that's just so valuable for us to be able to acknowledge each other and say, you know, we always say that I see you, but it's so important, and I hear you, and I'm going to actually do something with you. I think that's very important in our day now.
Yeah, Tia, I'm interested to know what the buy-in has been like, because when you talk about becoming a trauma-informed state, a lot of people don't really, I mean, you know, it took me a while. I had to do a lot of reading to really understand what that meant, and how has that been received from the folks that you're working with, because you're really talking about a shift in the way we deal with one another.
Well, I think if we don't shift, we're going down a road that is not either sustainable or healthy, and when you have a disproportionate representation of people in our systems that are being displaced from their lands, you have to create systems. Well, you know, and some would argue that, you know, the systems that are in place have to be shifted in order to have better outcomes. But the other piece that's in it is the workforce. All of us are in the helping profession, I would say, right? Those people that come to the helping profession are empathetic, just in nature. From when we were young, you know, we were the ones that friends came to for help. But what also brings us to this work is a very vulnerable, our ability to be vulnerable and connect with another person emotionally, which leaves us open to our own vicarious trauma interacting with another person, and which can lead to burnout, compassion fatigue, and a lot of secondary traumatic stress. And so I think if we don't shift what we're doing and we don't acknowledge that secondary traumatic stress is relevant, it's prevalent, it impacts us, and we have to look at it organizationally. A lot of people will talk about self-care, right? You go take care of yourself. Go make sure you go get your lomi. Make sure you go, you know, jump in the ocean. But shifting to organizational care is critical, because it can't just be on everyone else. And I really like what Lanai said about, you know, are we, you know, the helicopter parent generation? You know, are we enabling people? And, you know, as it relates to that, are we enabling the workforce? You know, are we shifting to policies that are, you know, a little less, more, I think, more nurturing? You know, if we don't, the amount of stress that people are taking on and vicariously receiving in the work is on this trajectory that's just continuing to go up. So if we don't do something systematically with policies, we're heading way in the wrong direction, and we know it from all the research. So,
There's a comment here from Lucille from Central Oahu, says, wants to thank everyone for this discussion. She feels like it's a therapy session that she's listening in on, and emphasize the importance of taking care of oneself physically and mentally, expressing gratitude for finding a way to center oneself and take a deep breath. You know, Haylin, what do you tell your teens, those folks who might not be able to, you know, find a counselor, might not have a parent who is receptive to providing that kind of care? You know, how do you take care of oneself if you can't, you know, get to a place like Spill the Tea?
Yeah, I think that I really agree with Tia in terms of having to shift the systems, almost like rebuild them, right? And I think that in terms of Spill the Tea Cafe, we built a place where we do have teen mentors there, and we have volunteers, we have boba, right? It's not like a traditional kind of mental health clinic, and that is trauma informed, right? Because we understand that these kids may be houseless or may, you know, not have the resources, and so when they come in, it's to connect with others, right? And we try to do things that are decolonizing the mental health service delivery, like ho'oponopono or drama and art therapy, right? And these are things that, like, traditionally, I think Hawaii is so unique and special, because if we as a people come together and demand this, right, then we can have it. But yeah, as it stands right now, the system is broken. Like, we can't bill for these things, these, like, you know, indigenous practices statewide. We're not able to bill for like 1/3 of our services because there's a safety issue at home, right? We can't, like, we have all these pre-licensed therapists, but we're not allowed to actually let them give therapy because of the policy as it stands right now, that I've given testimony 3 years in a row, and we're still,
Thank you.
right? Like, we need to, I think, have the courage to speak up and then demand action, right, from as a community. And that's why I'm so encouraged, because the young people and all the people here today too, it's like, we are willing to go against the status quo, right? And I think traditionally the helping profession, we are exploited because we are gonna be underpaid and overworked, and we're gonna be okay with that, right? And I think that's where our mindset is trying to shift. And I guess it's radical acceptance and responsibility of, like, I actually wanna change my life. And so I always kind of make a joke, like, if you have a therapist and they're just saying yeah and agreeing with you, then that's not actual therapy, right? You need to be in therapy to be improving something in your life. Just like all the Fortune 500 companies, they all have coaches and executive coaches. So when you look at therapy, we don't have to be like, oh, you're so crazy, like, you gotta go kahi mahala. That's how I grew up, right? But really, you're looking at, how can I improve myself? How can I be a better mom, a better wife, whatever, a better therapist, right? And I think it's hard for people to self-reflect. And so that's why we do encourage everyone to say, what do I need? What does this island need? And then let's, like, take action instead of waiting years and years and years and years. And it's like the same thing, you know? And so I do think that community might be the answer. And I hope, you know, we have a 501c3, and I hope it's very difficult. I would not recommend it unless you have, like, you know, a foundation or some kind of startup capital. But what I'm saying is, we don't have to wait on the bureaucratic systems. We can say, hey, you know, when a kid is hospitalized, maybe we should treat them like this way instead of that way, right? And let's bring the family in, and how about we ho'oponopono in here instead of the traditional, maybe Western way of doing therapy.
You know what we forgot too is mentors. Like, we don't use the word mentor anymore, but I met some kids a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about business, and I asked, there's four of them, I said, who's your mentor? And they're like, mentor for what? And I go, who's your mentor?
Yeah.
Mentor for what? They didn't even know what a mentor was. If you look at any successful businessman or a successful person, most of them have mentors. You know, I have mine. You know, and it's always good when you're stuck. You call your mentor. Pretty much unravel it for you.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing throughout this conversation tonight is the need for connection. And I'm wondering if you can tell us how we can connect through food, because we know that that is so much of the gathering, you know, so much of the gathering that we do in Hawaii is potluck, right? And why is that important, and what does that do for us when we connect through meals?
Well, everybody loves to eat. Everybody loves food, so I think it's natural that it would be a way for people to connect and de-stress and get to know each other and just spend time together. One of the things, you know, when Lanai had made the comment about, you know, there was more aloha when he was younger that he could see in his community, you know, than now. And something that I was reflecting on when he said that was, I remember when I was a kid, we had neighbors that would, like, bring over a box of avocados or bring over a box of tangerines or whatever. And my dad was a fisherman, or is a fisherman, I should say. So he would give them some fish. And there was a lot of that where neighbors are just coming randomly by and dropping off things.
The ahupua'a.
Yeah, and that was a way of showing that you care. That was a way of being a good neighbor. That was a way of showing aloha. And that was something that I don't see. I don't know if you folks experienced that in your neighborhoods, but I don't see that anymore.
Lanai still does it.
I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Michael on Maui says, we have to recognize that we're living in a different world right now, filled with information overload. We need to be able to set boundaries for the information we are taking in, and we need to slow down. Dr. Salle, with all the pressures that we're all facing, is it realistic to slow down? How do we actually do that?
Oh, you're asking me to solve societal problems. I think in the end, to your point that you made earlier, we are human beings at the beginning and at the end, and we're almost being asked to be computers, to plug in, and to operate, and to be the bridge for why one computer doesn't speak to the other. And I think societally, we are designing ourselves and our workforce, meaning all of us being the workforce, to do this. And I think we're going to probably hit a little bit of a wall as a group, and we need to pull back, and we need to have conversations like we're having right now, but in smaller circles. What makes me a human being? What is important to me? No, I cannot go the whole day and not eat and just be on a Monster drink or, sipping coffee all day and then expect not to feel like my head is going to explode at the end of the day or that I will have a hard time turning off. So I think I might be answering your question poorly, but I'm trying to say it's going to begin where we as a society begin to realize we're creating something that is not sustainable. It is against not only what we were meant to be as human beings in this state, it is anti-aloha, anti-ohana, anti-community, and that we need to start making decisions and as a society, what are our policy priorities? What do we really want to be? Do we really want something big and magnificent, or do we want to make school lunches, healthy school lunches, a priority? Because that fundamentally is what is going to build our community. So I don't think I'm answering so much as a physician, as a community member when I say that.
And I love that answer. Lanai, there's a question that came in specifically for you from Mike. It's okay. And he's saying, what do you see different when you were growing up compared to now when it comes to stress?
Well, I think like what everyone has been talking about, it's an overload of, we're trying to make a car so we don't have to drive. I learned how to drive a stick. I wish everybody would have to pass a test for driving to drive a stick, using that same idea and concept. I think personally because our parents worked so hard to get us a better life, we think we need to work hard to get our kids a better life. We're enabling all of our kids, and that's my personal opinion. So what has changed is we have not, bring back picking pineapple. My parents made me pick pineapple for a reason. When I came home and my check was $80, my mom said, "You now learn the value of money." We forgot how to teach the value of money because we don't want them to work hard. We want them to be a YouTube star or be IT, so you don't have to work out in the field. Or it's the physical part, I think, is the biggest thing that we have enabled our kids. Yeah, we play sports, but all those other things everyone else is talking about doing this, I'm guilty of it too, right? But I think that's the big part. Growing up in the country with nothing, you really see it cut and clear when you come to the city. It took me a long time to adapt when I got here. But that's really what I think we're missing is, there's a show out on Netflix, Living to 100. And one of the common things was all these people live to 100, from Okinawa to these places, was gardening and social community.
Yes.
Back and forth discussion, you know what I mean? Like, as soon as people retire in America, we sit on the couch with the remote control. Not these people, they're moving. So, yeah, you got to keep it moving. That's always been my slogan.
Well, and I think it's interesting, you know, what you were talking about is this idea of productivity, right? And that's a measure of, you know, our economic growth, right? Yes. We look at the productivity numbers year over year and see, as a country, how productive are our workers and how much quicker and how much more efficient are we, and perhaps setting some boundaries and slowing down and maybe picking some pineapple. I don't know how well I do out in the field.
I don't know if I would give up entirely on this generation, because as we're speaking, I think we're reckoning a little bit to the old days. Our young people, they never cease to surprise me, and some of them, they drive me crazy, you know. But where I mean that they never cease to surprise me, I think they are going to show us a different way.
Yeah.
You know, collectively, they are, I think, pushing back, wanting to connect. They don't quite know how to do it because they were introduced to a world that we weren't introduced to, this very technical world. But when you get them quiet and you get them speaking, you would be surprised some of the thoughts, some of the very grounded ideas that they have.
Yeah, I'm not taking away that from
No, I didn't
them.
mean.
Yeah. I travel a lot. Like, I'm never home. I've been to poorest parts of the world, and everywhere that I've gone, everyone says, man, you Americans are lazy. You know what I mean? It's just like,
really?
Why do they have that perception of us, you know? We're great, we make great movies, but yeah, it's just a weird thing to see what other people perceive of us, and they're right.
Well, and it's interesting because we're all working so hard, so
yeah,
how can we be lazy, right? Well, Raphael, let's hear from you. You know, when you talk to your peers, how are you de-stressing? What do you think that young people are doing that's right when it comes to this issue?
So actually, I've talked to a number of my friends about that. And actually, I don't believe any of them said going on social media. A lot of them mentioned listening to music. A lot of them said just hanging out with friends, taking a walk, going to the beach. I feel like those are great things because it kind of takes our mind away from the big bad world, and it just shows us that there's like so much in life that we're not able to really see because so much of everything these days is all on electronics, and I know I've always said that if I can spend my whole day like not going on my phone or on my laptop, that I would love that. But the reality is that everything is on there. All of my emails, how I communicate with friends, and I know that that's probably something that won't change, but it's us that have to change to make that not be the forefront of how we live.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this is saying from Steve, and I'm interested, you know, maybe we can just quickly go down the line. We only have a few minutes left here, but can you reduce down to a few words what parents could tell their children? And on the other side it says, what does a child want to hear? And I don't necessarily think this is just for parents to tell children, but, you know, what's your takeaway, all of you tonight, on how we can de-stress and what would you hope to see? Just in a few words, let's try to get to everyone if we can.
I think I always want to hear parents go to their children and just say, how would you like to spend the day together? And that's it.
Okay, and Tia, what would you say, not just parents, but you know, the people who are watching tonight, about how we can de-stress collectively or individually?
I mean, I think it would be spending time together, engaging in the outdoors. I mean, there's just so much opportunity here to do that all year round. So I think that would be mine.
Yeah, Dr. Salle, what about you?
You know, I think it helps if parents really refocus on what is most important to them, and then it becomes then how do you operationalize it or how do you execute it. And in the beginning and the end is your children need to know that they are loved, that they are the center of your world, that they matter. That, you know, even if everyone on social media gives them a thumbs down, they matter. And that they matter so much that one day they are also going to give to the world and their community and to their family. And then how you then share that time with your children to just constantly re-emphasize that should translate into turning your phones off, spending time together, not necessarily going out to a restaurant, but maybe just cook dinner. In actually the preparation of a meal in the kitchen that used to be the heart, not the microwave, but you know, I know we all do it, but I meant, you know, just chopping or making cookies, or, you know, instead of surrounding yourself binge watching, and I'm also a binge watcher, on TV. Why not go out to the beach, you know, grab something to eat and watch the sunset in this place that we live.
We only have 2 minutes. I want to get to everyone. So Dr. Leslie, briefly, what would you say to folks?
You know, I think for kids, it's just spending time with them, having mealtime without electronics. I think that's one thing you can do. But I think in terms of connecting with, say, other adults or your extended family, have get-togethers more, have more potlucks together.
Raphael.
I think communication is key, and even non-verbal communication.
Haylin.
I think really trying to instill in your kids that they're inherently worthy, so that that self-worth is not connected to productivity or anything like that. And something a little bit harder for parents, which I've had to do, is like realize that these children are born like through us, but I don't own them. They're not mine for my expectations. Like, they're their own person, and I'm on this journey with them. That's one thing that I really resonate with.
Oh, that's a hard lesson. I feel like I'm learning that every day. Suzanne, what would you say to viewers? What's your takeaway?
I have a simple brain hack, mind hack. And so instead of saying, I have to do this, or I need to do this, you say, I get to do this.
It's that attitude of gratitude, yes. Pastor.
I don't have any children, but except the children at church, and what I like to say to them is, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Christy.
Just, I love you no matter what you do or who you are. I'm always going to love you.
And Lanai, I mean, I know the viewer's question was talking about a few words to the children, but what do you want folks to take away from our discussion overall?
It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It really is. Stop worrying and overthinking, because that takes away creativity.
Yeah, yeah. And how do we actually do that? How do we stop worrying? What do you think is the key to that?
Gratitude, like everyone said, everything is always what you have. What you have is awesome. You know what I mean? You woke up. You got a great life. We live in the best place in the world.
I think that is something that, you know, we touched on about, we heard that gentleman at the beginning saying that he gets into the ocean.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget just how special Hawaii is.
I have friends who've never been to the beach. We're like, you live here, go to the beach.
Okay, all such good reminders, such wonderful advice. Thank you to each and every one of you for all of your insights tonight. We learned so much, and it's such a good reminder. You know, we need that aloha in each other, and we need compassion and empathy for one another. Mahalo to all of our guests and to all of you at home for being part of tonight's town hall. What stresses each of us is certainly unique, but perhaps knowing that everyone is going through something can perhaps push us to be a little kinder to one another and hopefully lessen the load. We are taking some time off here at KΑKOU to de-stress. We'll be back with another KAKOU in August, but our public affairs programming does continue with insights every Thursday night right here at 7:30. We do hope you join us for those discussions. I'm Dennison. Until next time, take care and aloha.
This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Local broadcasts of KΑKOU are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo. And by Young Brothers, providing quality service you can count on, connecting